Zara was a young black woman in her early 20s, and she had a quiet dignity about her. She wasn't tall, maybe 5'5", but she carried herself straight, like she had a secret. Her skin was a beautiful, deep cocoa color, and her hair was styled in neat, short twists that framed a face that was usually ready to smile. She didn't wear a lot of makeup, just a quick touch of lip gloss. Today, she was dressed in the cafe uniform, a dark, simple apron over a clean white t-shirt and comfortable dark jeans. She looked like a worker, ready for the day, but her eyes were the real story. They were large, expressive brown eyes, and right now, they looked tired. Zara wasn't just working to pay the rent, she was sending money back home to her widowed mother in Jamaica and trying to save up for nursing school. Every hour counted. The man who walked in next was everything Zara wasn't: loud, entitled, and moving like the world was his sidewalk. This was our other main character, Kwon. Kwon wasn't just wealthy, he was lethal. He was the head of a secretive, powerful organization, the kind of group that didn't like to be called Mafia, but certainly acted like it. He was in Toronto for a high-stakes, secret operation involving moving a huge amount of capital out of the country before authorities caught on. He felt untouchable. Kwon was Korean, with a sharp, angular face that usually looked bored or impatient. He was impeccably dressed, even for a casual meeting. Today, he wore a tailored, charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than Zara made in 6 months, a crisp white shirt buttoned all the way up, and no tie. His hair was slicked back, shiny and black as oil. He was taller than Zara by a foot and moved with a stiff, almost aggressive confidence. His eyes were small, dark, and always scanning, always judging. He looked like a man who never had to wait for anything, ever. Kwon walked past the small line of people waiting for their morning coffee, completely ignoring the basic rule of waiting your turn. He went straight to the counter. "Hey, buddy, the line starts back here," a man in a rumpled suit said from the back of the queue. Kwon didn't even turn his head. He just gave a small, dismissive shake of his hand. It was the movement of a king swatting away a gnat. Zara sighed internally. Dealing with entitled customers was the worst part of the job, and this one looked like a professional. She waited patiently for the current customer to pay, hoping Kwon would notice the glaring social cue and move back. He didn't. He slammed a gold card down on the counter. "I need a black coffee. Espresso shot, no sugar, no cream. And fast," Kwon demanded, his voice low and grating, delivered with a strong, clipped accent. Zara took a slow, measured breath. She looked Kwon right in the eye, not with anger, but with professional weariness. "Good morning, sir," she said, her voice smooth and gentle, contrasting sharply with his aggressive demand. "The line starts there, and I'll be happy to take your order when it's your turn. It'll just be a few minutes." Kwon stared at her. His face didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly, like he couldn't believe his ears. In his world, when he spoke, things happened instantly. "You don't understand," Kwon said, leaning over the counter just slightly. "I don't wait. I said I need the coffee now." The man from the back of the line now piped up again, a little louder. "She told you, pal. Wait your turn." Kwon finally turned his head, just enough to look at the other customer. He didn't speak. He just gave the man a long, cold stare, the kind of look that made the other man suddenly remember he was late for a meeting and needed to check his phone. The customer immediately fell silent and shuffled awkwardly. Kwon had that kind of power, the power of unspoken threat. He turned back to Zara, placing his hands flat on the counter. "Look," Kwon said, dragging the word out slowly. He let his gaze drift down to her name tag, then up to her hair, and then settled on her eyes. The look wasn't sexual, it was purely, devastatingly condescending. "I don't have time for this Canadian politeness. Hurry up. Just get the coffee. I'm giving you a massive tip." Zara felt a slow burn start in her stomach. It wasn't just that he was rude, it was the way he saw her, not as a person, but as a slow-moving obstacle. It was the casual disrespect, the assumption that her time, her rules, and her presence didn't matter. "Sir," Zara repeated, keeping her voice even, though it was a struggle. "I appreciate your business, but this cafe runs on a first-come, first-served basis. The customer before you ordered a latte and I need to steam the milk. It will be ready in 60 seconds. You may order after I serve her." Kwon let out a sharp, almost inaudible sound that might have been a laugh. He looked at the customer waiting behind the man in the rumpled suit, a kindly-looking older black gentleman, wearing a simple wool coat. Kwon then looked back at Zara. "No, I don't think you do understand," Kwon said, lowering his voice until only Zara could hear it clearly. "I am giving you an instruction. Do you understand instructions? I do not wait behind people like them." He didn't even have to point to the line. The implication was clear. He was a rich, powerful man, and the line was full of common workers, and specifically, the last customer Zara was serving and the next man in line were black. His contempt was naked and ugly. In that instant, something inside Zara snapped. She had dealt with rude people, but never someone who so openly displayed such deep, casual prejudice and entitlement. This was more than just a bad customer. This was a man who believed the fundamental rules of decency and respect simply didn't apply to him or to her. She took the woman's latte, placed it carefully on the counter, and gave the customer a genuine smile. "Have a lovely day. That's $5.80. The customer paid and quickly left, sensing the tension. Now it was Kwon's turn. Zara looked at his gold card still sitting on the counter. She pushed it back toward him with the tip of her finger. "Sir, the customer before you has been served," Zara said. Her voice was still calm, but it was colder now, harder than glass. "Now, please step back 2 feet. When you speak to me with respect, I will take your order." Kwon looked genuinely stunned. Nobody talked to him like that. Not in his country, not in his organization, and certainly not a barista who he considered disposable. "Are you refusing service to me?" he asked, the danger in his voice becoming crystal clear. "I am asking you to respect the line and to speak to the staff with common decency," Zara countered immediately. "Do you want to apologize for cutting in line, and for the disrespectful comment you just made? If you do, I will happily take your order." Kwon's face darkened. He wasn't used to apologizing to anyone, let alone someone he viewed as far beneath him in the social hierarchy. He was here on a mission that held billions of dollars on the line, and he was being held up by a girl over a coffee. The absurdity of it made his blood boil. He snatched the gold card back off the counter, his movements sharp and fast. He didn't yell. Instead, he simply stood there, staring down at Zara with a look of pure, concentrated malice, the kind of look that made people resign from their jobs later that day. "You have no idea who you just messed with," Kwon stated, his voice barely a whisper, but it sounded louder than a scream in the small cafe. "Enjoy your little job. It won't last long." He turned on his heel and strode out, his expensive leather shoes clicking loudly on the tiled floor. He didn't get his coffee, but he made sure everyone in the cafe felt his fury leave with him. As the bell above the door jingled, the entire cafe was silent. The older black gentleman in the wool coat was the first to speak up. "Young lady," he said gently, approaching the counter. "That was incredible. You handled that like a pro." Zara felt a rush of adrenaline leave her body, replaced by a slight, shaky exhaustion. She managed a weak smile for the kind stranger. "Thank you, sir. What can I get for you?" "A large Americano, please," the man said. "My name is Elijah. And thank you for standing up for all of us." Zara took his order, feeling a warm, emotional gratitude for the support. But as she made the coffee, a cold knot formed in her stomach. That man, Kwon, wasn't just annoyed. He was furious. His parting threat felt very, very real. She had just stood up for herself and her community, but she had also crossed a dangerous man who had too much power and no moral compass. She looked out the window at the towering glass building across the street, wondering if he worked there, or if he just owned the people who did. She suddenly felt very small, and the city felt very big and very cold. This one moment, this brief, stupid argument over a place in line, was about to change the entire trajectory of her simple, hard-working life. Kwon wouldn't forget, and he certainly wouldn't forgive. As she handed the Americano to Elijah, Zara realized she was smiling, but it wasn't just a barista's smile, it was the defiant smile of a person who just chose integrity over comfort. It was the smile of someone who had just picked a fight with a giant. Kwon did not leave the daily grind and simply go about his business. Not a chance. For a man who ruled by fear and silence, being corrected, being ordered, by a coffee shop employee was not just an insult, it was a threat to his entire reality. His secret operation, the billions of dollars, the high-stakes meetings, none of it mattered right then. All that mattered was the stinging burn of humiliation he felt because of a girl in a white t-shirt. Kwon walked across the busy street, his jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. He was supposed to meet his associate, a smooth, nervous-looking man named June, inside the large glass tower. But he couldn't think about business. He couldn't focus on the coded messages or the transfer schedules. All he could see was Zara's calm, defiant face. He stopped just inside the lobby of the corporate building, a cold, marble canyon of wealth. He pulled out his phone and made a single, curt call to June, who was waiting on the 40th floor. "Cancel the meeting," Kwon commanded in Korean, his voice low and dangerous. "I have an urgent errand. Get me the name and address of the girl working at the cafe across the street. The one with the short twists. Now." June, who was always anxious around Kwon, didn't ask questions. He knew that tone. He promised to have the information within the hour. Kwon didn't wait an hour. He couldn't. His pride demanded immediate satisfaction. He didn't want to just find Zara's home address and send some hired muscle later. He wanted to destroy her publicly, exactly where she had embarrassed him. He wanted to do it with his own two hands, right in front of the people who had witnessed his temporary fall from grace. He walked back across the street, his whole demeanor radiating cold, expensive fury. He had planned on using his power and influence to ruin her job, but right now, he needed something faster and dirtier. He needed to make a scene. When he walked back into the daily grind about 10 minutes later, the line was even longer. It was the absolute peak of the morning rush. The noise was constant, the grinding of beans, the hiss of the milk steamer, and the chatter of hurried customers. But the moment Kwon stepped through the door, a noticeable chill fell over the room. Everyone who had been there before remembered him. Zara saw him immediately. Her heart gave a hard thump against her ribs. She was taking an order from a young white woman named Clara, who was complaining about a chipped mug. Kwon walked past the line again, even more brazenly this time. He stopped right in front of the counter and looked straight at Zara. He didn't slam anything down. He just stood there, towering over the counter, his expensive suit looking completely out of place against the worn wooden stainless steel. He pulled a thick, tightly rolled wad of cash, at least $1,000 in crisp hundreds, from his inner jacket pocket. He threw the roll down on the counter with a soft, heavy thud. "I have money now," Kwon announced, his voice carrying clearly over the gentle bustle. He wasn't shouting, but his voice cut through the air, demanding attention. He spoke in perfect, deliberate English, ensuring every customer understood. "I want that black espresso. And I want you to apologize to me for wasting my time, for making me late, and for your appalling lack of professional respect." The cafe noise died completely. The hiss of the steamer stopped. Clara, the customer who was complaining about the chipped mug, froze with her mouth slightly open. Every eye in the room was now fixed on the counter, on the $1,000, on the furious Korean man, and on Zara. Zara looked at the money, then at his face. This was the moment of truth. He wasn't threatening her job anymore, he was buying her submission. He was trying to prove, in front of witnesses, that her dignity had a price, and that his money always won. She kept her hands still. She didn't touch the money or the counter. She met his cold, dark gaze with her own tired, but suddenly very steady, brown eyes. "Sir," Zara said, her voice quiet but firm, forcing the entire room to lean in to hear. "I will not apologize for asking you to follow the rules that every other customer in this room respects." Kwon scoffed, a quick, ugly sound. "Rules? You call this place a democracy? You work here. You are an employee. The customer is always right. The customer has the money. You just lost your manners and perhaps your sense of reality." He pushed the cash slightly toward her. "Take the money. Make the coffee. We forget this incident." Zara looked down at the money one last time. She thought of her mother back in Jamaica, of the expensive nursing school tuition, and of the fear of losing this job. She could just take the money, make the coffee, and avoid the fire. It would be the smart thing to do. But the thought of the look in his eyes, the look that said she and people like her were interchangeable, disposable background characters, made her feel ill. She took a clean, black napkin from the dispenser. She placed it carefully on top of the stack of cash. Then, she picked up the stack of cash using the napkin so her fingers never touched the money. She pushed the whole thing, money and napkin, gently back toward him. "Sir," she said, her voice now ringing with absolute confidence. I don't want your money. I make good coffee. I follow the rules. And I treat everyone with respect. I expect the same in return. You came back here to buy my apology, and I am telling you, that item is not for sale. She paused for a beat, letting the weight of her refusal settle in the utterly silent cafe. Then, she took the final, decisive step. Now, for the last time. Either you step to the back of the line and wait your turn, or you need to leave. You are disrupting my business. The entire room was frozen. The air was thick with tension. Customers held their breath, waiting for the powerful man in the expensive suit to explode. Kwon's face turned from cold anger to a kind of stunned, burning confusion. This had never happened. Never. He was used to people cowering, folding, taking the cash and the humiliation. He expected a frightened stutter, tears, anything but this calm, rock-solid defiance. The way she had picked up the money with the napkin, like it was dirty, was a physical rejection he would never forget. He was stunned. He was humiliated. He had just tried to buy off a poor worker in front of 20 witnesses, and she had publicly refused his money and told him to wait in line. He didn't speak. He just scooped up the cash, crushing the $100 bills in his tight fist. He gave Zara a look that was no longer just angry, but actively vengeful. It was a look that promised long, complicated pain. Kwon turned sharply and walked out of the cafe for the second time, but this time, he didn't click. He almost stumbled, his expensive shoes catching slightly on the entrance mat. The public rejection had actually managed to physically shake him. As the door closed, there was a collective, audible gasp, followed by a sudden burst of activity. People started moving, talking, and whispering. That was amazing. A customer named Leo, a young delivery driver, whispered loudly from the line. The man, Elijah, from the first encounter, stepped up again. He didn't need a coffee, but he needed to talk to Zara. Young lady, I don't know who that man is, but you just took a major risk, Elijah said, his voice laced with admiration, but also genuine concern. He looked like trouble, the expensive kind. Zara leaned over the counter, the adrenaline fading and the cold fear returning. I know, Elijah. But I couldn't let him win. I just couldn't. She knew she had won the battle for her own integrity, but she had certainly just signed up for a war. She had no idea how dangerous this man really was, but the intensity of his rage told her everything she needed to know. He was going to come back, and he wouldn't be alone. She just hoped her small cafe job was the limit of his reach. She quickly finished Clara's chipped mug order and worked through the long, backed-up line, the experience making her feel a strange mix of fear and power. She was scared, but she knew she had done the right thing. We're getting into some seriously high stakes here. Zara's courage might cost her everything, and you know a man like Kwon doesn't stop until he gets his revenge. The rest of the morning dragged by slowly. Zara kept glancing nervously out the window at the glass tower, half expecting Kwon to walk in with uniformed police or the manager, but the day stayed quiet. About an hour after the confrontation, just as the lunchtime rush was beginning, her phone buzzed with a text. It was from her manager, Ms. Vivian, a stern but fair woman who looked after the cafe like it was her own home. The text simply said, "Need you in the back office now. Big complaint." Zara's stomach dropped. This was it. Kwon hadn't come back, he had called. She was sure she was about to be lectured, or worse, fired. She asked Clara, the colleague who had been complaining about the chipped mug, to cover the counter. Zara walked into the tiny back office, which smelled faintly of stale coffee and cleaning supplies. Ms. Vivian was sitting behind the small desk. She was a middle-aged white woman with a precise haircut and glasses that sat low on her nose. She looked serious, but not angry. She held a pad of paper and a pen. "Sit down, Zara," Ms. Vivian said, her voice dry and measured. Zara sat, folding her hands tightly in her lap. "Ms. Vivian, about the man this morning." "I know about the man this morning," Ms. Vivian interrupted gently. "I was told about the man who cut the line, threw a lot of money at you, and demanded an apology. I was told about the 2 times he disrupted the flow of business." Zara swallowed hard, preparing her defense. "I understand if I'm in trouble, but he was incredibly rude, and I had to stand up for the rules." Ms. Vivian pushed the notepad across the desk. On it, in neat cursive, was written the name, phone number, an email address of a major corporate CEO whose company occupied the top 10 floors of the tower across the street. This man, Ms. Vivian said, tapping the pad with her pen, called me personally 15 minutes ago. He apologized profusely for the behavior of a third-party contractor that was meeting with him today. He said this contractor was extremely important, but that their behavior was unacceptable. He told me that he was standing in line today, saw the whole thing, and that you handled a very difficult situation with impeccable grace. Zara stared at the notepad, utterly bewildered. He said he saw you refuse the money and stand your ground. Ms. Vivian continued, a small, genuine smile forming on her lips. He said that if every employee in this city had your dedication to integrity, the world would run better. Zara felt a dizzying mix of relief and shock. The old man, Elijah, must have been someone important, someone who witnessed the whole scene and decided to step in. So, you're not fired? Zara whispered, afraid to break the good news. Ms. Vivian let out a soft laugh. Fired? Zara, he called to offer you a bonus equal to 2 weeks' salary, and he told me that if I ever fire you, he's pulling his corporate catering contract from us. He then personally guaranteed that the man you argued with, his contractor, Mr. Kwon, will be banned from stepping foot into this cafe again, by order of his corporate security. Zara felt the tight knot in her chest finally dissolve. She wasn't just safe, she had won. Her courage had not only saved her dignity but had been rewarded by a kind stranger who had a surprising amount of clout. He also told me, Ms. Vivian added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, that the contractor, Mr. Kwon, was immediately dismissed from his meetings because of his display of arrogance, and he was forced to leave the building. He hasn't just been humiliated in front of you, he's been humiliated in front of his powerful associates, and he failed his high-stakes mission. All because he couldn't wait 3 minutes for a coffee. Zara couldn't help but grin, the fatigue and fear washing away. The proud, powerful man who had tried to crush her was the one who had been crushed, by a far greater power, the kind of quiet integrity that even the rich and powerful sometimes respect. Her strength had not only defended her, but it had instantly dismantled his business plan. Justice, swift and complete, had been served. She thanked Ms. Vivian profusely, feeling a profound gratitude for the kind stranger, Elijah, whose intervention had truly saved her day. She walked out of the office and back to the counter with a new spring in her step and a newfound confidence. She had stood up to a bully who had tried to use money and prejudice as weapons, and she had won. She knew Kwon's vengeance might still come back in some other form, but right now, standing behind her counter, making a simple latte for a common person, she felt an immense wave of hope. She was poor, but she was not powerless. For a man like Kwon, failure was a myth, and embarrassment was a curse. His humiliation in that little Toronto cafe wasn't just a bad moment, it was a disaster. Not only did a coffee girl defeat him, but her actions directly led to the cancellation of a multi-billion-dollar operation, causing him a massive loss of face in front of the people he was supposed to impress. Kwon flew into a silent, freezing rage the moment he got back to his penthouse suite, a temporary, incredibly luxurious spot he rented in the city's most exclusive high-rise. He didn't break anything or shout at anyone. That was the cheap anger of common people. Kwon's anger was cold and meticulous. His associate, June, was already there, pacing nervously by the floor-to-ceiling window that showed the entire city laid out like a toy. June was a slight man, younger than Kwon, with a perpetual look of fear in his brown eyes. He was dressed well, but his suit never looked as natural or as menacing as Kwon's. Did you get the information? Kwon asked, stripping off his ruined charcoal suit jacket and tossing it onto a silk-covered chair as if it were contaminated. Yes, boss, June stammered, pulling out a slim file folder. But I had to do it quietly. She's just a local. Her name is Zara Dixon. She's 23. Lives in a small apartment complex near the subway line. She works the morning shift at the Daily Grind to pay for nursing school application fees. Kwon didn't look at the file. He walked over to the window, staring out at the cityscape, his reflection a dark, powerful silhouette against the bright glass. No family? Kwon asked, his voice low. Her father passed away 5 years ago, June reported, reading quickly from the file. She lives with her widowed mother, Sonia. Sonia is retired, but she has a small pension from a manufacturing job. They are close. Very quiet life. No debts, no trouble with the law. She's boring, boss. Kwon finally turned, his dark eyes like chips of ice. Boring? This boring girl made me look like a fool in front of the CEO of North Star Capital, and cost us 5 days of planning and millions in lost momentum. She is not boring, June. She is a viper in cheap clothing. He walked toward the file on the desk but stopped short of touching it. I need to know everything. Not just her address. I need her bank statements, her medical records, her school transcripts. I need the name of her cousin's dog if she has one. I need to know what she fears most. June shifted uncomfortably. Boss, we are here for the offshore transfer. This revenge is unnecessary. We should focus on the mission. Kwon looked at June, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I will not be corrected by a woman who makes $8 an hour. This is not about the mission anymore, June. This is about control. If I let this go, what happens when the next person disrespects me? This is a fundamental structural problem. She must be taught her place, and she must be terrified into submission. This is how we maintain power. June immediately backed down. Yes, boss. My apologies. I will start the deeper surveillance. Kwon nodded, a thin, cruel smile touching his lips. No, June. Not you. You need to fix the mission. I need someone quiet and very good at disappearing into the background. I need a ghost. He pulled out his own burner phone and made a call to a contact in New York City, a man who specialized in high-end, discreet surveillance. Within the hour, a skilled operative was already on a private flight to Toronto, paid for with Kwon's unlimited cash. The secret wait. Meanwhile, across town, Zara was finishing her shift. She had the bonus check tucked safely in her purse, a fantastic cushion that eased her anxiety about school. But the fear of Kwon lingered, like the smell of smoke. She took the subway home, a slightly older train car rumbling beneath the bustling city. The moment she stepped off at her stop and walked the short, familiar path to her apartment, she felt a familiar weight settle on her shoulders, a weight Kwon had no idea about. Zara lived with her mother, Sonia, in a modest brick building that was clean, but clearly old. Sonia was a lovely woman, a few years older than Ms. Vivian, with warm, silver streaks running through her coiled hair. Her skin was the same beautiful cocoa as Zara's, but her eyes held a deeper, more profound sadness. Sonia was a proud, hard-working woman who had spent 30 years in Canada, sacrificing everything for her daughter. The moment Zara walked through the door, the small apartment felt instantly warm and comforting, smelling of fried plantains and rice. How was work, my little warrior? Sonia asked, turning from the stove with a kind, gentle smile that made the sadness in her eyes soften. It was crazy, Mama, Zara said, kissing her cheek and placing the check carefully on the counter. She briefly, but carefully, told her mother about the confrontation, exaggerating the happy ending, the CEO's reward, and minimizing the genuine threat, Kwon's terrifying look. Sonia's smile faded a little. You are too much like your father, Zara. Always standing up to the big stick. I worry, child. The world doesn't always reward bravery. I know, Mama, Zara said, sitting down and taking a deep breath. She had to talk about the real stress, the one Kwon's rudeness had reminded her of. Mama, Zara started, her voice dropping. I made another application for nursing school. But I had to use the old address again. 2 days later, the ghost Kwon had hired arrived in Toronto. His name was Marcus. Marcus was a white man in his late 40s, blending perfectly into the crowd of Canadian business travelers. He wore simple, dark clothing and carried a nondescript backpack. He was quiet, efficient, and his eyes missed nothing. Marcus didn't approach Zara. He didn't even go to the cafe. He went straight to the apartment complex Zara and Sonia lived in. He found a small, cheap room to rent across the street. He looked less like a spy and more like a divorced man starting over. He spent the first afternoon simply watching the building. He observed the times Zara and Sonia came and went. He noted their routines, their habits, and their friends. He took pictures of Zara leaving for her morning shift, her face tired but determined. He reported back to Kwon that evening. She's clean, boss, Marcus reported over a secure line. No boyfriends, no bad habits. She takes the subway to the cafe, works, comes home, studies. The mother is retired. Standard working-class family. Nothing to use against her. Kwon was annoyed. Keep digging, Marcus. Look for the discrepancy. Everyone has a secret. Look at her bank accounts, her utility bills. No one lives that perfectly simple. Find the string I can pull. Marcus accepted the order. He was a professional, and he knew how to look beyond the surface. He started checking public records, tax forms, and old databases. When he ran Zara Dixon's current name and date of birth through the Canadian Tax Registry, everything was clean. But then, he ran her mother, Sonia's, name. And something flagged. A tiny, almost invisible discrepancy in the social security number that suggested the record was less than 6 years old, but the stated employment history was 30 years long. It was a faint, almost imperceptible smudge on an otherwise clean slate. Marcus smiled, a cold, hungry expression. He knew he had found his string. He had found the deep, dark secret that Kwon could use. The simple coffee girl was not who she claimed to be. The obsession had begun. Kwon just wanted to hurt her ego, but now he had stumbled onto a dangerous secret, a secret that, if exposed, wouldn't just cost Zara her job, but possibly her life and her mother's. The game had just changed from a petty feud to a matter of survival, and neither Kwon nor Zara knew how deep the rabbit hole went. The tension is mounting. Zara's past is about to collide with Kwon's vengeful present, putting her and her mother in serious danger. You don't want to miss what Kwon does next when he learns the truth about Zara's identity. Kwon was a man accustomed to success, and now, failure had poisoned his every waking moment. The humiliation from the cafe, combined with the professional disaster of his mission being cancelled, had turned his cold, calculating anger into a hot, brittle obsession. He was stuck in Toronto, waiting for June to patch up the damage and reschedule the corporate meeting. He felt trapped. To make things worse, Marcus, his surveillance man, had just delivered a startling report. Zara Dixon's life was a lie. The names, the dates, it was all clean on the surface, but the underlying records were suspiciously young. She was hiding something big, something that went beyond simple financial struggles. This new information didn't calm Kwon, it infuriated him more. He hated being fooled. He hated secrets he didn't control. Kwon decided he needed air. He didn't want to talk to June, and he certainly didn't want to think about the billions in delayed funds. He needed to walk, to remind himself that he was still powerful. He left his penthouse and wandered into the dense, busy streets of downtown Toronto, avoiding the glass tower and the infamous cafe. He ended up in a slightly older, less flashy district, a part of the city with independent bookstores, small ethnic grocery stores, and quiet public parks. It was the kind of place ordinary
Kwon
people
stopped in
actually
front of
lived
her,
and shopped.
blocking her path.
Kwon was dressed down
He
today,
didn't smile
slightly.
He wasn't
He wore
overtly
expensive,
threatening,
dark
but his
jeans,
presence,
a black
tall,
turtleneck,
imposing,
and a long,
and dressed
tailored
in heavy
coat,
black,
the
was
kind of
intimidating
clothing that
enough
still
on its
screamed
own.
wealth but allowed
Ms.
him to
Dixon,
move quickly.
Kwon said,
He looked
using
at
her
the
name
people
for the
walking
first
by
time.
with disdain.
Hearing it
but
from
he
his
forced
lips,
himself to
so
focus
close,
on the architecture.
sent a shiver down
and then
Zara's
he saw
spine.
her.
We need
It wasn't
to
a
talk.
setup.
We
It
have
was a
nothing to
genuine,
talk about,
cruel twist
sir,
of fate,
Zara said.
Zara was
clutching
coming
her
out of a
pharmacy
small,
bag tight
bright
against her
pharmacy,
chest.
carrying
She
a
forced
prescription
herself
bag.
to stand tall.
She wasn't
remembering
in her
her win
uniform.
at the cafe.
She was in a simple,
You were banned
knitted
from the
black
cafe.
sweater and jeans.
I suggest
a dark
you go
green
back to
taupe
your
pulled
nice
over her
building and
twists.
leave me alone.
She
or
looked
I will
tired.
call the police.
Her shoulders slumped slightly
Kwon
under the
laughed,
weight of
a
worry
harsh,
about her mother,
dry sound
Sonia,
that had no
who
humor
had
in
been
it.
struggling with a
Police?
persistent cough lately.
You think I'm afraid
She
of the
didn't see him
police?
at first.
No,
She
my
was
dear.
looking down at her
I
phone,
wanted to see you
texting
here,
her mother
alone,
about the medicine.
because I realized
Kwon
something
stopped
important.
dead in his tracks. He
His
stepped
heart,
closer,
usually
invading her
a steady,
space.
mechanical
His eyes
pump,
boring
gave
into
a
hers.
single, hard
I
bump
realized
against
that
his
I may
ribs.
have been too
The sight
impulsive
of her,
at the
unarmed,
cafe.
alone,
I was
in
wrong
a
to
setting
cause a
far
scene.
from her protective
I had a bad
counter.
day. Sent a rush
I
of
was
dangerous
delayed on a
excitement through
very
him.
expensive
It was a
trip.
chance, a gift
Zara
from
blinked,
fate.
surprised.
He didn't hesitate.
This was not the
He
icy
crossed the
rage she
street with a
expected.
long, quick
It
stride.
almost sounded like
Zara
an
finally
apology.
looked up from her
Are
phone
you
just as he was
apologizing?
nearly on
She
top of
asked
her.
skeptically.
Her body
I
tensed
am
instantly.
explaining.
Kwon
The blood
corrected
drained from
sharply,
her face,
and
and
an
her
explanation
eyes,
is
usually
worth more
warm,
than a simple
went wide
apology.
and cold with
I am
recognition
telling you
and
that you
fear.
interfered with
You,
something you don't
she whispered,
understand.
taking a
I want to
half-step
offer
back,
you money,
ready to bolt.
a significant amount, for your time, and for the inconvenience I caused you. He paused, his eyes searching hers, looking for the flicker of greed, the weakness he could exploit. Let's call it a peace offering, Kwon added, trying to sound reasonable. I will pay you $10,000. You take the money, and you forget my face. We are done. A quiet end. Zara stared at him, bewildered by the shift. $10,000 was life-changing money for her. It would cover a whole year of nursing school, maybe two. It would solve all her current financial problems and give her mother real peace. But then she remembered his face at the cafe, the way he looked at her like dirt. She remembered the sheer malice. This wasn't a peace offering, it was a way for him to finally win, to buy back the dignity he felt she had stolen. It was a way for him to believe he could still buy anyone, anywhere. And he would never give her that money without believing that he had just bought her silence and her submission. "No, thank you, sir," Zara said, shaking her head. The refusal was harder this time, because the temptation was real. "I don't want your money. You don't owe me anything. You already paid for your rudeness when you lost your contract." Kwon's eyes narrowed instantly, the veneer of civility shattering. "You keep talking about my contract. Do you think that little CEO's reward was your victory? You think that petty bonus means you beat me?" He stepped closer still, his voice dropping to a dangerous hiss. This was where the cracks began to show. "I am offering you $10,000, and you are worried about your pride? Do you know what I could do with $10,000? I could find out every single thing about you. I could find out where you came from, why you moved to this city, and what kind of messy past you are running from." Kwon wasn't making a threat, he was stating a fact based on Marcus's report. He was using his knowledge like a surgical knife. Zara's blood ran cold. The pharmacy bag almost slipped from her fingers. He didn't just know her name, he knew she was hiding something. He had been digging. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, forcing her face to remain blank, but the fear was visible in her wide eyes. Kwon saw the fear and seized on it like a predator. "Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking about, Ms. Dixon. The girl who is so honest she won't take a tip, but whose entire identity seems to have been invented 5 years ago. The addresses that don't quite line up. The deceased father who has no obituary under that name." He leaned in, and this time, the true, raw anger of a man under extreme pressure came spilling out. His voice cracked with frustration, and for the first time, the calculated malice was replaced by a glimpse of genuine, frantic need to assert control. "I was humiliated, Zara. I lost time, money, and face. I am not used to that. You, a nobody, a person who doesn't even seem to exist outside of this cafe, you did that to me. And you think I'm going to let you walk away with your dignity intact? You are insane," Zara whispered, trying to back away. "You are making up lies. Leave me alone." "Lies?" Kwon challenged, his chest heaving slightly under the expensive coat. "Tell me, Zara. Where were you 5 years ago? And what was your mother's name before Sonia? I know you're hiding. And I will find out why. I will pull the thread until your whole life unravels. I don't care about the $10,000. I want the control back." In that moment, Zara realized she was not dealing with a simple bully or an arrogant businessman. She was dealing with a man whose immense power had kept a fragile ego intact. The failed mission and the public humiliation had caused a serious, emotional break in his composure. He was acting on raw, personal rage, and that made him incredibly dangerous. She had to strike back now, or she would fold. She had to remind him that she was not an easy target. She remembered her father's mantra, "When they roar, you whisper the truth." Zara took a deep breath, standing her ground again. She looked up at his furious, demanding face. "You're right, sir," Zara said, her voice surprisingly steady, considering the seismic shift in her stomach. "I have secrets. We all do. But mine are hiding me from people who would hurt me. Yours are just hiding how much of a failure you are right now." Kwon froze. Her simple, brutal word, failure, was exactly what he was running from. "You're here, trying to scare a barista with $10,000 and made-up stories about my mother," Zara continued, pressing the advantage. She spoke the truth she saw. "Your meeting was cancelled. Your mission failed. The great powerful man who won't wait for coffee has nothing to do right now but harass a woman leaving the pharmacy." She looked him up and down with genuine pity. "You can't even go back to the cafe. The whole city knows you're a man who loses his temper over a 3-minute wait. You're not terrifying, sir. You're just lost." That was the final blow. Her words, simple, easy to understand, and completely true, hit him like a physical force. The entire facade of control he maintained over his emotions, his mission, and his life completely collapsed for a split second. Kwon's eyes lost their focus, and his lips parted slightly. The color drained from his already pale face. The intense frustration, the shame of being banned from the building he was supposed to conquer, and the realization that this girl saw straight through his wealth and threats to his professional inadequacy, it all hit him at once. He looked profoundly hurt, like a child who had been told his favorite toy was fake. He didn't respond. He just stood there, breathing heavily, the crack in his emotional armor now visible for all to see. Zara didn't wait. She used the moment of his stunned silence to slip quickly around him. "I'm calling the police if I see you near my home or my work again," she said, her voice now hard and commanding. "Go fix your mission, sir. Leave me out of your drama." She walked away quickly, her heart pounding against the fragile paper bag. She didn't look back until she had rounded a corner and was sure he wasn't following. She was shaking, but she had survived the second, even more dangerous clash. She hadn't just stood up to him, she had seen his weakness, and she had exploited it. Now, she was absolutely certain of two things: she was in genuine danger, and he was not going to stop. He needed to destroy her to fix himself. The battle has moved off the counter and into the streets, and now Kwon knows Zara's biggest secret, that she has won. And Zara just found Kwon's emotional weak spot, the fear of being seen as a failure. Their conflict is now deeply personal and terrifying. Zara's legs felt like rubber as she walked the last few blocks to her apartment. Her apartment building, usually a comforting sight, now looked like a target. She didn't dare look behind her, but she could still feel Kwon's furious presence lingering in the air. She knew she had done the right thing, standing up to him. She knew her courage had won the day. But this second clash was different. At the cafe, she beat his arrogance. On the street, he had struck at her deepest fear, the past. "Where were you 5 years ago?" The question echoed in her head, sharp and cold. How did he know? Had he found the fake IDs already? The moment he started digging, the whole quiet life she and her mother, Sonia, had built here in Toronto would come crashing down. When Zara finally got inside the small, familiar apartment, she locked the door with 2 clicks and stood against it, breathing heavily. The apartment was warm, filled with the usual comforting smells of home, but the fear she carried made everything feel hollow. Sonia was in the living room, knitting a blanket, her silver-streaked hair catching the late afternoon light. She looked up, her kind eyes immediately registering Zara's distress. "My heart, you look like you saw a ghost," Sonia said, setting the needles down carefully. Zara walked over and sat down hard on the sofa next to her mother. She took Sonia's hand, the familiar touch offering a small anchor. "I saw him again, Mama," Zara confessed, her voice thick with panic. "The man from the cafe. Kwon. I saw him near the pharmacy." Sonia's face tightened. "What did he do? Did he threaten you?" Zara swallowed. She couldn't tell her mother that Kwon knew they were using false names. She couldn't add that burden to Sonia's already heavy heart. "He tried to bribe me," Zara lied, keeping the worst part hidden. "He offered me $10,000 to apologize to him and forget the whole thing. He wanted to buy back his pride. I told him no. I told him he was a failure." Sonia looked at her daughter, her pride battling with her fear. "You are a fool, but you are my fool," she murmured, patting Zara's hand. "That is a lot of money to refuse, Zara. He is dangerous. We need to be invisible. Now he's obsessed." "He is obsessed because I beat him, Mama," Zara insisted, trying to sound confident. But her eyes were far away, lost in the shadows of their old life. The truth was, the fear of exposure was nothing compared to the guilt that Zara carried every single day. That guilt was what kept her up at night, what fueled her endless shifts at the cafe, and what was truly driving her entire life. She stood up and walked to the small bookshelf in the corner, where they kept a handful of worn novels and a collection of old photo albums. Hidden deep behind the last row of books was a small, locked metal box, no bigger than a dictionary. Sonia watched her, the deep sadness returning to her eyes. They both knew what was in that box. "You still look at it, child?" Sonia asked softly. "I have to, Mama," Zara whispered. Inside the box wasn't jewelry or cash. It was a single, beat-up, external hard drive, wrapped tightly in a plastic freezer bag. It had belonged to Zara's father, Lincoln. Lincoln Dixon wasn't just a warehouse foreman. He was a good man who had stumbled onto something massive. 5 years ago, the New Jersey street gang that killed him wasn't running a local operation. They were simply the hands and the muscle for a much, much bigger, highly organized international network. A network that used legitimate-looking businesses to smuggle things and wash money. Lincoln had been a foreman at a logistics company that, unknowingly at first, was being used as a front. He saw the unusual shipment logs, the coded invoicing, and the staggering amounts of money being moved. He started tracking it all, making digital copies of manifests and encrypted communications, believing he could turn it over to the authorities and stop them. The day he was killed, he had been trying to get the hard drive to an FBI contact. He never made it. Zara knew that hard drive held all the evidence, years of financial manipulation, coded communication logs, and the names of the powerful people at the very top of the syndicate. It was a time bomb. Zara's mission was simple, dangerous, and completely unavoidable. She had to finish what her father started. She didn't just want to hide. She wanted justice for Lincoln. The moment they settled in Toronto and established their false identities, Zara's focus shifted. She didn't want the gang to just be looking for her, she wanted to find the gang, and crush them with the truth her father died to protect. She had spent the last 5 years educating herself, not just in nursing, but in cryptography, corporate law, and information security, all from free, online courses. She was preparing the hard drive, learning how to decrypt the files and separate the web of lies from the truth. She wanted to present the authorities with an ironclad case that would put the people who ordered her father's death behind bars forever. I was so close to finishing the decryption on the main ledger file, Zara confessed to her mother, holding the hard drive like it was a heavy stone. It's the key piece. It names the corporate directors, Mema, the ones who hide the muscle. But it's the last layer of encryption. It's too complex for me to break without risking a complete wipe of the data. Sonia watched her with a mixture of love and terror. Child, your father knew the risk. Let it go. We have survived. That is the justice we need. No, Mama. Surviving is a gift. Justice is what we owe him, Zara insisted, her brown eyes blazing with a fierce, quiet intensity. Every day I refuse to act is another day I feel responsible for him not finishing the job. I can't go to nursing school until I do this. I can't live a lie knowing the truth is in this box. The guilt was overwhelming. If only Lincoln hadn't started tracking the records. If only she had urged him to go to the police sooner. If only she had been home that night. That guilt was her engine. Now, Zara felt an icy spike of fear that had nothing to do with her old life and everything to do with her present problem, Quan. The international criminal network her father had exposed had one main corporate function: massive, untraceable capital transfers. They had partners all over the world, including the brutal local gang that killed Lincoln in New Jersey, and they had financial managers at the top making the big decisions. Zara stared at the hard drive, then out the window toward the glass tower where Quan had his failed meeting. Mama, Zara said, her voice barely a whisper, a terrifying realization washing over her. Quan's mission. The one he failed because of me. The one he was trying to push through North Star Capital. What about it, child? Marcus, my father's friend who helped us disappear, he told me about that company years ago. They are a third-tier financial partner in the network my father was investigating. Not the head, but a crucial link. Sonia's eyes widened with pure dread. You mean, that Korean man is connected to them? The people who killed Lincoln? Quan is here to oversee a massive financial transfer, Zara confirmed, nodding slowly, her heart now racing. If my father's evidence exposed the network's corporate heads, it would cripple their ability to move money. Quan is the money man. He is the high-level financial manager for this international syndicate. The New Jersey gang was just their local muscle. Quan is the CEO of the company my father exposed. The reality was crushing. Zara hadn't just angered a random rich man, she had stumbled into a direct conflict with the very organization that had murdered her father and forced her to live a life of fear and deception. The simple dispute over a cup of coffee was not an accident, it was a head-on collision between her past and the heart of the organization she was hunting. Quan didn't just pose a threat to her fake identity, he was the central target of her father's secret mission. And now, thanks to Marcus's digging, Quan knew she was hiding something, and his curiosity would lead him directly to the hard drive, the evidence, and the complete destruction of his own operation. Zara closed the metal box with a quiet, decisive click. The fear was still there, but it was now overshadowed by a burning sense of purpose. Her isolation was over. Her mission was no longer something she did alone in a dark room. It had just walked right into her life, demanding that she act. Kwon was looking for a ghost with a hidden past. Zara was about to reveal that the ghost was actually the only person on the planet who had the evidence to sink his entire empire. She just had to finish decrypting that final file before he exposed her. She looked at her mother, a new determination shining in her tired eyes. "I'm not putting the hard drive away, Mama. I'm starting to work on the last file tonight." This is the turning point, the crucial link that throws Zara and Kwon into a high-stakes, life-or-death battle. Zara, the simple barista, is now unknowingly holding the key to the entire operation Kwon is here to fix. She has the evidence, and he has the resources to destroy her. The stakes couldn't be higher. While Zara was wrestling with her father's hard drive, trying to uncover the secrets of her past, the man who had exposed her, Kwon, was spiraling into a deep, destructive obsession. He was sitting in his ridiculously expensive penthouse suite in Toronto, surrounded by silence and marble, but all he could see was the defiant face of a barista. Kwon wasn't working. He wasn't restructuring the failed financial transfer. He wasn't making important calls to Seoul to apologize for the delay. He was simply staring at the detailed file Marcus, the operative, had sent him, the file on Zara Dixon. He looked at the tiny discrepancies Marcus had found, the mismatched addresses, the 5 years of missing records, the suspiciously fresh social security number for her mother, Sonia. This quiet girl who made coffee was running from something enormous. And she had the nerve to call him a failure. Kwon felt a dangerous mix of hatred and admiration. He hated her because she had humiliated him, but he admired her because she was clearly a survivor, a formidable opponent who had built an entire false life around her mother. His lead associate, June, was the first to realize how deep the boss's distraction ran. June was in the suite, trying to look busy by organizing stacks of financial reports, but his real job was to manage Kwon and keep the mission on track. June cleared his throat nervously. "Boss, the new transfer schedule is ready. We can finalize the move by the end of the week if we leverage the Shanghai assets instead of the Toronto account. We just need your final sign-off on the coded sequence." Kwon didn't move. He didn't even acknowledge June's presence. He was scrolling through the blurry, long-lens photos Marcus had taken of Zara leaving her modest apartment building. "Boss, did you hear me?" June tried again, his voice rising slightly with anxiety. "The delay is already causing severe pressure from Mr. Beck in Hong Kong. They are threatening to pull the capital." Finally, Kwon turned. His eyes were not focused on June, but somewhere far behind him. "Mr. Beck is weak," Kwon said dismissively, his voice flat. "Let him pull it. We don't need his peasant money. What did Marcus report today?" June stammered, pulling the latest surveillance report from his jacket. He couldn't believe this was happening. A multi-billion-dollar syndicate operation was secondary to finding out what a coffee girl ate for dinner. "Marcus reports she went to the library today, boss. She took out books on computer security and cryptography. She's studying the science of breaking codes. And she spent 4 hours on an old laptop, connected to the library's Wi-Fi. He couldn't hack the connection, but she was looking at dense financial schematics." Kwon's eyes brightened, a cruel, cold spark lighting them up. "Aha. So she's not just a barista. She's a thief. She's trying to steal secrets. She's studying how to break into things. She's a professional problem. Or she's studying for a test, boss. She's applying to nursing school," June offered weakly. Kwon shot him a silencing look. "Nursing school doesn't require codes, June. This is deeper than a simple revenge. She has something. She knows something. I want to know what she was looking at. Send another man. A technical expert. I want that laptop compromised." June felt a wave of icy panic wash over him. Kwon was becoming reckless. Sending a technical expert to compromise a laptop in a public library was the kind of amateur move that drew unnecessary attention from local police and security agencies. "Boss, respectfully," June began, choosing his words with extreme caution. "You are becoming distracted. This Toronto transfer is already 5 days late. This is a crucial link in the supply chain for the entire syndicate. Other leaders are watching. They smell weakness. June was absolutely right. The sprawling, secretive international crime syndicate that Kwon worked for, the same one Zara's father had died trying to expose, was not a friendly place. It was a vicious ecosystem full of ambitious, hungry men who spent their lives waiting for a rival to fail. The failure of the Toronto transfer was a massive, public sign of trouble. The delay meant that money was sitting still, and in their world, money that wasn't moving was money that could be tracked, frozen, or stolen. One of those hungry men watching was a distant cousin of Kwon's, named Minute Ho. Minute Ho was a high-ranking manager in the same syndicate, but he handled the manufacturing and supply lines, a much dirtier, more violent business than Kwon's clean finance work. Minute Ho was always jealous of Kwon's privileged background and his fast rise to the top of the financial division. Minute Ho was currently back in Seoul, South Korea, drinking expensive whiskey and watching the live reports coming in about the Toronto fiasco. He is spending his time chasing a girl, Minute Ho scoffed to his own nervous associate. The great Kwon, the financial genius, is paralyzed by a petty insult. He has lost his focus. He has lost his mind. Minute Ho saw the opportunity clearly. If Kwon failed this operation, and the syndicate lost face, the leadership position that Kwon held would become open. Minute Ho could step in, save the mission, and seize control of the financial division. Call Mr. Lee in Zurich, Minute Ho commanded, his voice sharp and confident. Tell him that Kwon's coded sequence is compromised, and the Toronto account is too hot. Suggest that we should manage the withdrawal through the Zurich platform instead. Tell him that Kwon is suffering from personal instability. The pressure wasn't just internal. Minute Ho was actively stirring the pot, telling lies and half-truths to ensure Kwon's failures looked irreversible. Kwon was so focused on Zara's small lie in Toronto that he couldn't see the massive, life-threatening conspiracy building against him across the world. But the most dangerous blow to Kwon's reputation and stability wasn't coming from a jealous rival like Minute Ho, it was coming from his own home. Kwon was engaged to be married. His fiancée, Eun-ji, was the daughter of a hugely powerful, connected politician in Seoul. Their marriage was not a love match, it was a merger of power, designed to protect Kwon's business with political influence and provide Eun-ji with the wealth and status she craved. Eun-ji was an extremely beautiful woman in her late 20s, with long, silky black hair always perfectly styled, and a wardrobe that screamed quiet, undisputed luxury. She wore subtle, elegant makeup, but her eyes, like Kwon's, were always assessing, always calculating. She had a bitter, jealous streak that Kwon had always ignored. Eun-ji was furious. She didn't care about the billions in delayed funds, but she cared deeply about her image. She was supposed to be married to the next powerful leader of the syndicate's finance division. Reports that Kwon was distracted and jeopardizing their future because of a foreign woman were intolerable. Her high society friends were already whispering. She was also deeply jealous. She was convinced Kwon was using the Toronto trip as an excuse to conduct an affair. The fact that he was obsessing over a low-level barista only made her fury more focused. Eun-ji sat in her elegant Seoul apartment, staring at the blurred photo June had mistakenly sent to the family chat, a photo meant for an internal report that showed the exterior of the daily grind. She called her cousin, Hyeon, a junior manager who worked inside the same North Star Capitol building in Toronto that Kwon had been banned from. Hyeon, listen carefully, Eun-ji commanded, her voice like chilled silk. I need you to confirm a few things for me. That little cafe across the street from your lobby, the daily grind. Does the girl with the short, dark twist still work there? Hyeon, terrified of his powerful cousin, confirmed that Zara was still working the counter. Good, Eun-ji said. Now, I need you to quietly send a report to the corporate compliance office. Not to Kwon's people. To the independent compliance manager. State that you have noticed Mr. Kwon and his associate repeatedly trying to access the North Star systems using unauthorized credentials, especially after being banned from the building. Make it look like a security risk, not a personal matter. Hyeon stammered, but Eun-ji, that's a lie. They are just delayed. It's not a lie if they tried to fix their failure, is it? Just say you noticed unauthorized attempts, Eun-ji insisted, her voice hardening. If the corporate compliance manager sees a security risk tied to the massive financial operation that just got frozen, he will have to report it up the chain, directly to the regulators. This will freeze Kwon's accounts and assets in Canada immediately. He will be forced to come home. Eunji's plan was beautiful and simple in its cruelty. She didn't want him dead, she just wanted him ruined and brought back to Seoul, where she could regain control over him. She was pulling the kind of strings that Kwon, with all his money, couldn't cut. Kwon, still stewing in his penthouse and planning how to expose Zara's hidden past, remained completely oblivious. He was focused on the small threat right in front of him. He was sending a technical expert to compromise a single laptop, convinced that Zara held the key to his revenge. He had no idea that 1. Minute Ho was actively destroying his reputation within the syndicate. 2. Eunji was using corporate security protocols to freeze his Canadian assets and force him into a global regulatory investigation. 3. Zara's encrypted hard drive, the one he was desperately trying to find, didn't just hold the key to her past, but the literal evidence to destroy his entire financial division and send him to prison for life. He thought he was the hunter, but he was actually walking into a complex, multi-layered trap set by his own ambition, his jealous fiancé, his greedy rivals, and a brave barista with a secret hard drive. Kwon picked up the phone to call Marcus again, demanding more details about Zara's mother's medical history. He was blind to the fact that his world was crumbling around him, all because he couldn't stand 3 minutes in line for a cup of black coffee. The stage was set for a massive collision. For 3 days, Zara had barely slept. She was obsessed, fueled by coffee and the burning conviction that she had to finish her father's mission. The fear that Kwon knew her secret only increased her urgency. Every hour she waited was an hour Kwon's men were digging deeper into her life. She sat at her small, rickety desk, the hard drive from her father, Lincoln, plugged into her aging laptop. The final encryption layer on the ledger file, the one that named the corporate heads of the syndicate, was impossible to crack with the software she had. It was a military-grade lock. "I need a better key," Zara muttered to herself. She realized she needed a specific, powerful piece of decoding software, and she couldn't download it from her apartment's Wi-Fi. It was too risky. She needed a secure connection and a disposable computer terminal. She had an old contact, a kind but shady electronics repairman named Mr. Chen who ran an obscure shop in a rough industrial section of Mississauga, outside of Toronto. Mr. Chen was known for ignoring questions and having the best, most expensive tools for any technical problem, no questions asked. It was late, close to midnight, but she couldn't wait until morning. "I'm going out, Mama," Zara told Sonia, who was asleep on the sofa. "Just for an hour. I need to print something for school." Sonia just mumbled and shifted, allowing Zara to slip out quietly, wearing a heavy, oversized jacket to blend in and carrying her precious hard drive deep inside an inner pocket. The industrial district of Mississauga was a labyrinth of steel warehouses, closed loading docks, and dark, empty streets. It was the kind of place where bad deals went down and nobody asked questions. Mr. Chen's shop was hidden in a dead-end alleyway, marked only by a faded neon sign reading Fix IT. Zara walked down the dimly lit alley, her heart pounding a quick rhythm against her ribs. She finally spotted the shop and saw a light on inside. Just as she was about to reach for the handle, she stopped dead. She heard voices. Low, sharp, and definitely angry. One voice was cold, with a thick New York accent. The other was Canadian, fast, and aggressive. They were standing deep in the shadows between 2 large delivery trucks, hidden from the streetlights. Zara recognized the New York accent instantly, and a wave of pure nausea hit her. It was the voice of Dante, the local boss of the New Jersey street gang, the crew who had killed her father. He was here, in Toronto. Marcus's digging must have alerted them that their loose ends might be exposed, and they had traveled north to clean up their mess. Dante was a large, brutal-looking man, dressed in a thick leather jacket, and he was flanked by 2 equally menacing men. They looked like professional muscle, not businessmen. The other group consisted of 3 men in tracksuits, local Toronto thugs, known for extorting money and violence. Let's call them the Aces. Dante was holding a man in a rumpled suit against a brick wall. This man was clearly a low-level accountant or courier, someone who worked for Kwon's syndicate, but was completely out of his depth. "You're late, and you're short," Dante snarled, pushing the courier's head hard against the bricks. "The package was supposed to be delivered 3 days ago. Your boss, Kwon, is messing up the schedule, and my boss doesn't like a delay." The terrified courier stammered, "I don't know anything. The transfer is frozen. Ask June. I'm just a runner." "We don't ask," one of the Ace's men cut in, stepping forward. "We take. Kwon's money is stuck, so we take what you owe us. You pay us for wasting our time." This was the dangerous intersection. Dante's New Jersey crew, working for the same syndicate as Kwon, was trying to fix the mission delay on their end. But the Aces, the local Toronto rivals, were simply using the chaos to shake down Kwon's people and steal the money they thought was vulnerable. Zara was walking into a conflict between the past, Dante, and the present, the Aces, fueled by Kwon's failure. Zara knew she needed to run, but her feet were frozen. She was hidden behind a dumpster, clinging to the shadows. She couldn't believe Dante was here. He was the most direct, visceral link to her father's death. Suddenly, the situation exploded. The courier, desperate and panicked, shoved Dante and tried to bolt down the alley. "Get him!" Dante roared. The fight broke out immediately. The Aces and Dante's men turned on each other, believing the courier was a distraction. Knives flashed, and a metal pipe scraped against the concrete. The courier screamed as he was tackled, and the air filled with the sounds of brutal, immediate violence. Zara knew she had to get out. She turned to retreat back toward the street, but just as she did, one of Dante's men, trying to flank the Aces, spotted her movement behind the dumpster. "Hey! Who's there?" the man yelled, turning and pulling a small, heavy object from his pocket, a handgun. Zara didn't think, she bolted. She ran straight into the alley, making a dash toward the dimly lit street, her heart hammering wildly. "Stop her!" She saw everything. Dante yelled, abandoning the courier to focus on the witness. Dante was ruthless. He couldn't afford any more complications in this city. If she saw his face, she had to disappear forever. Zara ran past the fighting men, adrenaline overriding the fear. The man with the gun raised his arm, taking aim. Miles away, sitting in a black SUV parked discreetly near Zara's apartment, Marcus, Kwon's surveillance ghost, watched his multiple screens. He wasn't a detective, but a highly skilled military-grade operative. Suddenly, an alarm blared softly on his dashboard. It wasn't a civilian panic button, it was a specific frequency tracker Marcus had secretly placed on Zara's phone after their second clash. It told him two things. 1. Her location, the desolate Mississauga Industrial District. 2. The threat level, her phone was moving too fast, too erratically, showing a high level of panic and danger. Marcus immediately ran the address through a crime database. He recognized the location, a known drop-off point for low-level syndicate activity. He quickly calculated the odds. Zara was either meeting someone dangerous, or she was caught in a serious crossfire. Marcus didn't care about Zara. He cared about his job. Kwon had paid him a fortune to find out her secret. If she died now, the secret died with her, and Marcus wouldn't get paid. More importantly, Kwon would be furious, and that was the most dangerous outcome of all. Marcus immediately called Kwon. Kwon was back in his penthouse, playing a tedious game of strategy on his tablet while ignoring June's attempts to fix the Shanghai transfer. "Marcus, what is it?" Kwon snapped, annoyed at the interruption. "Boss, Zara Dixon is running for her life in the Mississauga Industrial Zone. Coordinates attached. She's at a hot zone, likely a turf war. If she dies, you lose everything she knows. She's being pursued by men with guns." Marcus's voice was crisp and devoid of emotion. Kwon stared at the coordinates Marcus had sent, which flashed briefly on his tablet. He saw the distance, the danger, and the immediate, terrifying reality. The last connection to her secret, the last way to get his revenge and regain his control, was about to be extinguished. His first, instinctual thought was, good. Let her be erased. But then, the realization hit him with the force of a punch. If Zara died now, his curiosity would never be satisfied. His revenge would be incomplete. He would never know what massive secret she was hiding, and he would never get the satisfaction of watching her crumble. She would win by dying, escaping the consequence of her defiance. His rage was so absolute, so consuming, that he realized he needed her alive more than anything else. He needed to be the one who ended her. He needed to control her fate. "June," Kwon commanded, slamming the tablet down. "Get the car. We're going to Mississauga." Move. And bring 3 of the heavy security detail. Now. June, utterly baffled, didn't question the sudden, insane shift in priorities. Kwon was abandoning a multi-billion-dollar financial strategy to chase a barista into a gang war. June knew the boss had finally lost it. Kwon's black, armored sedan, driven by a silent, professional driver, tore through the city streets. Kwon sat in the back, silent and cold, his mind racing. He was going to save the one person he hated most in the world. The irony was suffocating. They arrived at the industrial zone just as Zara, exhausted and terrified, reached the main street. She was running blindly, the man with the gun, Dante's enforcer, just meters behind her. Kwon's car didn't stop. It sped up. With a sudden roar of the engine, the black sedan swerved violently, cutting off the pursuing gunman, forcing the enforcer to slam into the side of a parked shipping container to avoid being hit. The car didn't touch the man, it simply removed him from the chase with a precise, violent maneuver. Zara, seeing the massive black car, thought she was about to be run over. She stumbled and fell onto the curb, scrambling to get up. The sedan screeched to a halt beside her. The back door opened instantly. Kwon didn't look at her. He spoke to his 2 large, stone-faced security men in the front seat. Go. Finish them. Clean up the chaos. Anyone who touches my interests in this city, eliminate the threat. Do not harm the girl. The security men, dressed in simple black suits, were out of the car and back into the dark alley in less than 3 seconds. They were professionals, moving like lethal shadows. The sounds of the renewed fight were muffled, then quickly silenced by professional, precise force. Kwon finally looked at Zara, who was staring up at him, her chest heaving, her eyes huge with panic and confusion. Get in the car, Kwon ordered, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, like he was ordering room service. Zara, seeing the expensive suit, the cold eyes, and the sheer audacity of the rescue, was more terrified now than she was in the alley. No. You did this, she gasped. If I did this, you would be dead, Ms. Dixon, Kwon snapped, annoyed. He reached out and grabbed her arm, pulling her with a surprising, gentle force into the safety of the back seat. He did not let go until the door was slammed shut. He spoke to the driver. Go back to the penthouse. Quietly. As the car pulled away, leaving the silent, now empty alley behind, Zara realized that the man she hated, the man who was hunting her, had just saved her life. He looked down at her, the confusion in his own eyes mirroring hers. He had intervened, not for justice or kindness, but because she was a valuable piece of his own twisted game of revenge. He had just gone against every instinct he had, proving to himself and to her that his obsession was now fully in control of his life. You don't get to die, Ms. Dixon, Kwon said, staring straight ahead as the lights of the city rushed past. Not until I know what you're hiding. Zara is safe, but she is now trapped in an armored car with the very man who wants to destroy her, and he knows she has a secret worth killing for. Kwon saved her life, not out of heroism, but out of absolute, cold-blooded necessity, a terrifying realization for them both. The ride back to downtown Toronto was the longest, most terrifying 20 minutes of Zara's life. She was trapped in the spacious back seat of an armored black sedan with the man who had terrified her for a week, Kwon. The heavy glass, the soundproof doors, the thick scent of expensive leather, it all felt like a coffin. Zara sat pressed against the far door, clutching her purse with the hard drive inside. She was trembling, not just from the cold adrenaline of the fight, but from the shock of Kwon's brutal, necessary intervention. He had saved her, but she knew exactly why. She was his property now, his source of information, and he wouldn't let anything harm her until he had what he wanted. Kwon sat on the opposite side of the car, rigid and silent. He wasn't looking at her, he was staring straight ahead, his face a mask of cold fury. He was furious that he had to save her, furious that his precise, clean plan for revenge had turned into a desperate rescue mission. Don't waste my time, Kwon said finally, his voice cutting through the silence like a razor blade. He spoke in a low, even tone, never taking his eyes off the road ahead. I saved your life, Ms. Dixon. The people back there were animals. Now, you tell me the truth. What is on that laptop you were trying to compromise at the library? Why are you hiding? Zara swallowed hard, finding her voice. It was shaky, but determined. I don't know what you are talking about. I was just going to Mr. Chen's shop to get something fixed. Kwon finally turned his head, his dark eyes fixing on hers. Do not insult my intelligence. My men found a turf war in that alley. Your presence there was not random. You are not just a barista hiding some overdue parking fines. You have a secret that is worth sending hitmen after. And now, my operation is at risk because you insist on being a hero. He pressed the advantage, his voice suddenly hard and threatening. I know you are not who you say you are. Your identity is new. Your father's death records are murky. Tell me what you are hiding before I give you back to the men I just ran over. Zara knew she couldn't lie anymore. He was too close. But the full truth was too dangerous. It is about my father, Zara whispered, choosing her words with extreme care. He was killed 5 years ago in New Jersey. He was killed by the local gang who worked for the people you work for. I have evidence that proves who ordered the hit. That is why I am hiding. Kwon looked genuinely confused. His obsession was about cold, corporate betrayal and financial control, not old street violence. A street gang. Kwon scoffed, dismissive. You risked $1 billion operation because of an old street feud? That is irrelevant. Tell me what evidence you have that affects my syndicate. It's a hard drive, Zara confessed, her voice barely audible. It proves the local gang was being paid by your syndicate, the corporate directors, to run illegal logistics. It proves the smuggling. It proves the money laundering. It is the ledger that connects your New Jersey branch right back to the top of your financial division. If I break the final code, the FBI will know who you are. Kwon stared at her, absorbing the reality. She was a threat, a real one, but still a cold, calculated financial threat, the kind he understood. He didn't see the depth of her terror yet. Just as Kwon was about to press her on the location of the hard drive, his private phone rang, a short, distinct tone. It was Marcus. Kwon answered immediately, his eyes never leaving Zara's face. Report. Marcus's voice, filtered through the speaker, was crisp and alarming. Boss, we cleaned the alley. The local Toronto thugs ran. The New Jersey crew is gone, but we found something that changes everything. One of the New Jersey men dropped his phone. It had a lock screen photo of a woman, a crude, personalized tribute. We ran the photo and the phone number through the dark web records. Marcus paused for dramatic emphasis, even over the phone. Boss, the man leading that New Jersey crew was not Dante. It was Omar. He's not just a gang leader. He's a psychopath. He was a low-level manager in Lincoln Dixon's warehouse. He was fired for stalking and harassment, specifically, targeting Ms. Dixon. He was obsessed with her. When Mr. Dixon reported the smuggling, Omar used the opportunity to kill him and bury the body, making it look like a gang hit, hoping to track the women later. Kwon's eyes finally widened in genuine, deep alarm. This was not the cold, rational crime he dealt with. This was something terrifyingly different. Marcus continued his report, his voice cold but urgent. The surveillance photos on the dropped phone were not just recent. They were from years ago, outside Ms. Dixon's old New Jersey home. There are files showing intense surveillance, stalking. Boss, the killing of her father wasn't just a syndicate cleanup. It was a favor, a personal execution done by an obsessed criminal, Omar, to punish the family and force Ms. Dixon into hiding so he could find her later. He is far more dangerous, boss. He is hunting her, not for the ledger, but for her. Zara heard the name Omar and let out a small, strangled cry. The strength that had held her together for a week completely dissolved. Tears streamed down her face, and she pressed her hands against her mouth, trying to choke back the sudden, violent sobs that racked her body. Kwon saw the fear now. Not the professional fear of a witness, but the primal, raw terror of a victim who has just realized her monster is back. The fear in her eyes was darker and deeper than any financial threat. Omar was the true, terrifying enemy from her past. He wasn't just the muscle that killed her father, Lincoln. He was a violent stalker who had tormented Zara for months before the murder. He was a man who wanted to control her, who saw her rejection as an unforgivable offense, and who used his gang connections to execute her father and force her into hiding. She had been running from him, not just the syndicate. Kwon, who had spent his life dealing with clean spreadsheets and quiet, impersonal corporate murder, was suddenly confronted with this ugly, visceral, deeply personal crime. He realized that this man, Omar, was not interested in assets or ledgers. Omar wanted Zara. And a man motivated by obsession and malice was unpredictable, sloppy, and infinitely more dangerous to Kwan's professional safety than a dozen rival gangs. Omar would use any means, any noise, any chaos to get to Zara, and that chaos could easily lead the police straight to Kwan's hidden operation. Kwan finally turned to Zara, his cold face momentarily stripped bare by genuine shock. Omar, he repeated, the name tasting foreign and repulsive. He is hunting you personally. He found you because my man, Marcus, made noise with his inquiries. Zara couldn't speak. She just shook her head violently, tears blurring her vision, the dam of 5 years of trauma finally breaking. The image of her father, kind and quiet, lying dead in the street, flashed through her mind. All because she wouldn't talk to a horrible man at work. Kwan reached out a hand. It was an instinct, not a kindness. He didn't comfort her, he gripped her shoulder with a sharp, controlling pressure. Listen to me, Ms. Dixon, Kwan commanded, forcing her to look at him. We have a new problem. A serious problem. The men who came tonight, they were just following Omar. Omar is not interested in my mission. He is interested in destroying you, personally. And if he finds you here, he will cause so much noise, so much violence, that the police and the regulators will come down on this city and expose my entire operation. He was thinking clearly now. The hard drive was a future threat. Omar was an immediate, volatile catastrophe. He needed Zara safe, not for her sake, but for his. Where is the hard drive? Kwan demanded. It's in my purse, Zara finally gasped, pointing to the bag clutched in her lap. Kwan didn't touch it. He looked at the hard drive, then back at Zara's tie-streaked face. He saw her fragility and her immense strength, all at once. He realized that the woman he had dismissed as a cheap barista was actually a deeply traumatized survivor who was holding the fate of his entire criminal empire in her hands. Kwan made a decision. A desperate, unbelievable decision that went against every rule he lived by. I am not your friend, Ms. Dixon, Kwan said, his voice hard but carrying a strange weight of sincerity. And I still intend to ruin you for what you did to me. But I need you alive and quiet. I need that hard drive stable. And I need Omar gone. He is a liability. He looked at her, his dark eyes demanding compliance. We have the same enemy now. An unstable animal who is tracking us both. Your father's evidence can destroy my financial network, but Omar's violence will destroy my reputation and put me in prison first. We have a temporary truce. A truce. Zara whispered, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to process the madness. Yes, Kwan confirmed, his lips set in a thin, determined line. He led her into a large living area. I will not touch you or the hard drive. The only color came from a deep, emerald green silk sofa in the center of the room. My men, my money, Kwan ordered, to find Omar and eliminate his threat quietly. Hidden bar. In return, 2 fingers of amber whiskey you know about Omar's methods, and downed it in one weaknesses, and you will stay exactly where I put you until to regain his composure. He had just seen pure, ugly violence, and it had unsettled his perfectly controlled world. When he turned back, Zara was sitting on the edge of the silk sofa. Her entire body was slumped, defeated. Her face was pale beneath her cocoa skin, and her eyes were dull, fixed on some unseen horror in the past. She wasn't crying anymore, she was just empty. The fear was gone, replaced by a devastating, crippling exhaustion. She didn't look like an enemy. She looked like a shell. Kwan walked over and stood over her, tapping his fingers impatiently against his clean, dark trousers. The hard drive, he demanded, pointing to the purse. Give it to me. I need to know what files you accessed. Zara didn't respond. She slowly reached up and took the small, green toque off her head, revealing her short twists. She held the hat in her hands, twisting the wool, her gaze focused on the silk below her. He said he hated me for being kind to my father, Zara finally whispered, her voice so thin and fragile it was almost lost in the massive room. Kwan frowned. He wasn't prepared for this. He expected defiance, tears, or screaming. Not this quiet confession. Who? Kwan snapped. Omar. What did he say? Zara let out a shaky breath. Omar was a foreman at the warehouse where my father, Lincoln, worked. He was always trying to pressure me, asking me out, asking for my number. He was crude. My father saw it and asked him to stop. My father was always the kindest man, but he was firm. She paused, closing her eyes tightly, reliving the moment. Omar got angry. He was fired for harassing me, but he came back that night. He didn't just kill my father because of the smuggling ledger. He killed him because my father protected me. He took my father away to punish me for rejecting him. She opened her eyes, and the pain in them was overwhelming. And then he started sending my mother and me chilling, anonymous messages, saying he would find us, that we belonged to him. That's why we fled that same night. That's why we changed our names. He didn't just want money, he wanted to terrorize me. He wanted to make me regret saying no. Zara then did something that completely broke Kwon's carefully constructed shell. She started to cry, but not with violence or anger. It was a silent, deep, soul-shattering weep. Her shoulders shook slightly, and big, hot tears dripped onto the emerald silk of the sofa. Kwon stood there, rooted to the spot. He had seen fear. He had ordered violence. He dealt in death and betrayal every day. But he had never seen this kind of pure, vulnerable human grief. He had never seen a woman weep because a monster stole her father to punish her rejection. In his world, people cried over lost money, betrayed trust, or ruined status. They didn't cry over simple, profound acts of love and protection. He looked at the tear stains spreading on the expensive silk. The fabric, which symbolized his wealth and control, was being ruined by the raw, messy pain of a survivor. It was an impossible image for him to process. He didn't know how to handle it. His instinct was to be cruel, to demand compliance, or to simply walk away and let an associate handle the cleanup. But he couldn't. Her pain had paralyzed him. Kwon slowly reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a pristine, white silk handkerchief, the kind he only used for show, never for utility. He hesitated for a long moment, staring at the crumpled form of the woman on his sofa. Then, with a sigh of immense frustration, a sound of a man doing something deeply against his nature, he knelt down in front of her. "Ms. Dixon," Kwon said, his voice now lower, losing its sharp edge. "Stop. Crying does nothing. You need to focus. We need to focus." Zara didn't look up. She kept weeping silently. He took the handkerchief and gently, awkwardly, placed it on her knee. He couldn't bring himself to touch her face. "Take this," Kwon said stiffly. "Wipe your face. We are finished with the past. Omar is here. He is a threat to me now. We need to strategize." Zara slowly took the handkerchief, and when her fingers brushed against his, Kwon felt a jolt, a sudden, unexpected wave of emotional confusion. He recoiled slightly, standing up quickly, putting distance between them. He walked over to the windows, staring out at the impenetrable darkness. His mind was in chaos. He didn't hate her right now. He felt something far more dangerous, a sickening pity mixed with a strange, fierce desire to protect her from the monster she had described. He realized the true scale of her courage. She hadn't just stood up to an arrogant boss, she had lived under the constant threat of a killer for 5 years, and she still refused to break. She was strong in a way he, with all his armies and money, could never be. Kwon rubbed his forehead, realizing the cracks were showing in his own armor. His entire life was built on ruthless, self-serving control. He felt nothing for anyone. But the sight of this girl's quiet, broken grief, and the horrific personal motive behind her father's murder, had exposed him to an emotion he had no experience handling. It was sympathy. It was admiration. It was deeply, terrifyingly human. He hated the feeling. It was a distraction. It was a weakness. He turned back to her. Zara had wiped her eyes and was sitting up straighter, holding the silk handkerchief tightly in her hand. She looked exhausted, but the core of her strength was returning. "I didn't know he was still looking for me," Zara said, her voice stronger now. "I thought the Toronto move was enough." "It would have been enough for a common gang member," Kwon said, his voice regaining some of its authority. "But not for a personal obsession. That man is unstable. That is why he is a danger to me. Unpredictability is chaos. And I do not permit chaos." He walked toward a large, ornate map of Toronto that was hidden behind a painting. He pressed a button, and the map lit up, showing a detailed network of roads and encrypted signals. "We will use your pain now, Ms. Dixon," Kwon stated, reverting to cold strategy. "You know Omar's weakness, his obsession with you. We know his looking for the hard drive, but he wants you more. We will use Marcus to broadcast a specific signal, a breadcrumb that will look like a mistake in your old social media. We will lure him out. Zara looked at the map, then back at Kwon. The ruthless strategist was back, but she had seen the fleeting moment of humanity, the awkward handkerchief, the confused pity. Lure him out? To where? She asked, clutching the handkerchief like a shield. To a place of my choosing, Kwon said, his eyes hard. Where my men can neutralize him permanently. We will use you as bait, Ms. Dixon. But I will protect you. I need you alive to break that final file on the hard drive. I need to know what names are on that ledger before my enemies ruin me. He looked at her, and this time, the look was different. It wasn't hatred or contempt. It was a cold, shared necessity, tinged with that confusing, uncomfortable recognition of her courage. We are in this together, Zara, he said, using her first name, a small, profound shift in their relationship. I need justice to win, and you are the only person who can deliver it. I will keep you safe from the monster from your past. In return, you will give me the tools to destroy my future. He looked at the small, wet patch on the emerald silk sofa. The stain of her sorrow was an indelible mark on his perfect life. He hated the feeling, but he knew he couldn't go back. He had crossed a line, and now he was tied to her pain and her fight for justice. The emotional barrier has been shattered. Kwon has witnessed raw vulnerability and responded with a strange mix of clinical strategy and genuine, confusing pity. He has acknowledged their shared purpose and necessity. The next step is a dangerous, calculated move to lure out the monster from Zara's past. The enormous estate felt less like a safe haven and more like a cage. Inside the guarded walls, Kwon and Zara operated in a tense, silent rhythm. Kwon was on the phone almost constantly, coordinating with Marcus, the ghost operative, to hunt Omar. Zara was bent over her laptop, running decryption software, trying desperately to crack the final code on her father's hard drive, the one that held the corporate names. Kwon treated Zara like a sensitive piece of evidence, necessary, valuable, and utterly irritating. He demanded constant updates on the decryption progress but kept a strict distance, still struggling with the confusing human emotions she had unlocked in him. Meanwhile, outside the secured room, June, Kwon's nervous associate, was reaching his breaking point. The financial mission was still frozen, the rivals were circling, and Kwon was spending millions of the syndicate's money to chase a personal vendetta against a local stalker. June didn't understand the nuance of Omar's threat. All he saw was chaos and a boss who was losing his mind over a barista. June paced the hallway outside the secure room, clutching his phone. His self-preservation instinct had taken over. He knew Minute Ho and Eun-ji, Kwon's jealous rival and scorned fiancé, were waiting for a chance to strike. He had to betray Kwon to save himself. June called Minute Ho, the manufacturing manager in Seoul who was hungry for Kwon's job. The boss is insane, June whispered into the phone, his voice shaking. He is not focusing on the transfer. He has the coffee girl, Zara Dixon, here in the secured house. He is protecting her. He is risking everything for a woman. Minute Ho's voice, coming back across the Pacific, was sharp and victorious. A woman? That is amateur. We already suspected a distraction. No, not a distraction, June insisted, taking the final, fatal step of betrayal. It's worse. He is hiding something. And the girl knows it. Boss is not just protecting her, he is terrified of her. I heard him on a coded line the other night, talking to his mother. June lowered his voice further. Boss has been pretending he is the rightful heir to the family's corporate honor, that he chose the dark path of finance to protect the syndicate. But that's a lie. He didn't choose the dark path, he was forced onto it because of his older brother, Sung-ho. Minute Ho listened, silent and deadly. Sung-ho was the real heir, a genius in legitimate finance, June continued. But when their father died, Sung-ho found evidence that Kwon had been embezzling from the legal family funds for years to start his own syndicate operations. Sung-ho was going to expose him to the elders, which would have meant complete exile and shame. June choked back a sob of relief and fear. Kwon didn't have him killed. That would be too risky. Instead, Kwon framed Sung-ho for a major regulatory fraud, destroyed his name, and forced him into deep, humiliating exile. The corporate elders kicked Sung-ho out, and Kwon stepped in, claiming his own brother was a disgrace. Kwon has been hiding his family's oldest disgrace, that he betrayed his own blood for power. If the elders knew he destroyed his brother for a crime he himself committed, he loses all honor, all power, and his position would be forfeit immediately. He fears exposure more than death. Minute-ho hung up without a word. He now had the ultimate weapon, the destruction of Kwon's honor. Minute-ho wasted no time. He didn't bother trying to reason with Kwon. He immediately contacted his enforcement teams in North America, relaying two pieces of critical intelligence: Kwon's deepest secret, the betrayal of Sung-ho, and the location of the girl, Zara. Minute-ho's command was simple: seize the girl and the hard drive, and expose Kwon's shame to the syndicate elders. The war had begun, and Zara was the ultimate prize. If Minute-ho got the hard drive, he could prove the Toronto operation was compromised, destroying Kwon professionally. If he got Zara, he could use her testimony to expose the personal dishonor, destroying Kwon socially. Within hours, the quiet, safe estate was compromised. It was late afternoon. Zara was sitting on the floor, surrounded by notebooks and her laptop, when she heard the faint, distant sound of an alarm, not a siren, but a quick, coded blip from the security system. Kwon rushed into the room, his face taut with immediate, cold terror. He wasn't afraid of a random attack, he was afraid of an organized attack on his specific location. "The perimeter has been breached," Kwon said, his voice clipped and precise. "It's not Omar. Omar uses knives and shadows. This is professional. This is the syndicate." He looked down at Zara, his mind instantly racing. June. It had to be June. He told them, "I'm hiding you. They are coming for you and the hard drive." He grabbed the metal box containing the hard drive and shoved it into Zara's arms. "You take this. Do not let go of it." Suddenly, the security door to the room buckled under a sharp, concussive blast. Thick smoke poured in, and the sounds of automatic gunfire echoed from the front of the house. Kwon grabbed Zara's arm and yanked her toward a hidden wall panel behind a bookshelf. "Move. Now." Kwon slammed a button, and the bookshelf slid away to reveal a narrow, dusty staircase spiraling downward. "This is a panic route," Kwon explained quickly, pushing her down the stairs ahead of him. "It leads to the utility tunnels beneath the house. We can't take the main car." They scrambled down the dark, concrete stairs. Zara was breathing heavily, clutching the metal box to her chest. "They want the hard drive," Zara gasped. "And they want you shamed." "They have the secret now," Kwon snapped, descending quickly behind her, his hand resting on the weapon hidden beneath his coat. "June betrayed me. Minute-ho knows everything. I have lost my position. But I will not lose my life to that jealous fool." They reached the bottom, which opened into a low, damp concrete tunnel, a service tunnel that ran under the estate grounds. As Kwon pulled the bookshelf panel shut, plunging them into darkness, he turned to Zara. He was terrified, exposed, and running for his life, and he was forced to reveal a truth far deeper than the betrayal of his business. "Listen to me, Zara," Kwon hissed, his voice raw, close in the darkness. "They are going to tell the world I betrayed Sung-ho. My brother. The one everyone loved. They will say I framed him for embezzlement." Zara whispered, "Did you?" Kwon hesitated. In that terrifying moment, stripped of his authority and running for his life, the truth slipped out, raw and painful. "Yes," he admitted, the single word hanging heavy in the damp air. "I did. But I had to. Sung-ho was going to turn our entire family over to the authorities for running the syndicate in the first place. It would have ruined our mother and destroyed the name our father had built. I had to choose, ruin the family name forever, or ruin my brother and save the family's wealth. I chose the shame of betrayal over the shame of public collapse." He paused, breathing hard. "I did it to protect my name. The name I thought mattered." He finally confessed his true, deepest secret. His entire ruthless persona was built on a single, agonizing choice to sacrifice his beloved brother for the sake of the family's survival and perceived honor. He had chosen power over love, and now, that choice was destroying him. Zara saw the real man then, not a cold monster, but a powerful, deeply fractured soul trapped by a terrible choice. He was a man drowning in his own sense of dishonor, and that dishonor was what Minute-ho was using to hunt him. Suddenly, lights flashed down the tunnel. They had been followed. "They found the service route," Kwon said, his voice flat. He grabbed Zara's wrist again, pulling her deeper into the darkness. We move. We are ghosts now. But they want you more than me. They need you to complete their story. The betrayal was complete. Kwon's deepest secret was exposed, stripping him of his power. He and Zara, the barista and the boss, the victim and the hunter, were now bonded by a shared, desperate flight from multiple enemies. The war for the future of the syndicate, and for Zara's life, had truly begun. Kwon's secret is out, and his empire is crumbling, forcing him into a desperate, honest alliance with the woman he despised. Their tense relationship has shifted from suspicion to shared, life-or-death necessity. Now, they must navigate the criminal underworld together, two unlikely fugitives against an entire syndicate and a psychotic killer. The utility tunnel beneath the secured estate was the last place Kwon ever expected to find himself. Just days ago, he commanded billions and moved through the world untouchable. Now, he was running through cold, damp concrete tunnels with Zara, the woman he had intended to destroy, clutching her father's hard drive like a lifeline. The attack had been brutal and fast, a testament to Minute-Ho's efficiency and June's thorough betrayal. Kwon's security detail had been overwhelmed, and his safe house was now just a ruin. As they emerged from the tunnels and into a wooded area far outside the estate walls, they were just two people, a disgraced boss in a ruined suit and a fugitive carrying a massive secret. They had nothing but the clothes on their backs and a burner phone Kwon had grabbed. "We need to get to the city," Kwon whispered, pulling Zara quickly through the dark trees. "They won't expect us to run back towards the chaos. Minute-Ho and Eunji will assume we fled the country." Zara was exhausted, but the intense fear had sharpened her mind. "Where is your mother, Sonia? We need to call her. She needs to know I'm safe." Kwon stopped, pulling out the phone. "My people moved her out of the apartment the moment I was alerted to the syndicate attack. She's with one of my trusted former guards, hidden outside of Hamilton, Canada. She is safe. But she is alone." He made a quick, coded call to his driver, who had thankfully escaped the assault. He directed the driver to a discreet pickup location 15 miles away. They walked in silence, a strange pair of fugitives, the financier and the former barista, sharing only the heavy burden of their losses. Chart with downward trend, the boss is broken. As they walked, the full weight of the syndicate's betrayal hit Kwon. He wasn't just losing money, he was losing his identity. He pulled up the syndicate's private internal network on the burner phone. The news was already devastating. "It's over," Kwon murmured, the phone slipping slightly in his sweaty palm. "Minute-Ho has circulated the full report. My assets are frozen worldwide. The elders have seen June's testimony about my brother, Sung-Ho. They didn't even need to verify the corporate crime. The fact that I betrayed my own blood, my own family name, for power, that is the only proof they need." He looked at Zara, his face stripped of its usual arrogance. "I am disgraced. Minute-Ho has been named the new financial head, and he is telling everyone that the Toronto operation was his rescue mission. I have lost my entire professional life." Kwon had lived his life based on the control of two things, money and honor. Now, both were gone. He was nothing but a criminal with high-level connections, and he knew that Minute-Ho would order his death to secure the new position. "You still have the hard drive," Zara reminded him, her voice low. "You still have the chance to expose them all. And you still have your life," Kwon retorted, the coldness returning, a reflex to mask the pain of his loss. "But you cannot afford to feel safe yet. Minute-Ho might have my job, but your original monster is still out there." While the syndicate war raged, Omar, the psychotic killer from Zara's past, had been quietly tracking her. Marcus's brief inquiries had led Omar to the general area of the First Estate. When the massive attack happened, Omar didn't run. He watched. Omar was not a strategic financial genius like Kwon, he was an animal of instinct and obsession. He realized two things. 1. Kwon was desperate to protect Zara. 2. Kwon was now on the run, meaning the expensive security was gone. Omar didn't care about billions, he cared about possession. He saw the attack as the perfect opportunity. While the professionals fought each other, he could slip into the chaos and seize his prize. Kwon's phone buzzed with a message from Marcus, who had gone into deep cover but was still relaying vital, last-ditch information. "Omar is in the city," Kwon read aloud, his eyes scanning the details Marcus sent. "He didn't follow the main attack. He went straight to your old apartment. He is now tracking the movements of your mother's former neighbor. He knows Sonia is the next target. Zara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Mama. He thinks she knows where I am. He'll use her to lure me out. The full collapse of control hit Zara then. She had survived years of running and hiding. She had stood up to Kwon and fought her own battles. But now, her greatest protection, her mother's safety, was gone. Her controlled, secret life had finally exposed the person she loved most. She had nothing left to lose except her mother. I have to call the police, Zara whispered frantically. No. Kwon hissed, grabbing her arm. If you call the police, Minute-ho will know where you are within the hour. You and Sonia will be exposed, and Minute-ho will get the hard drive. We have to beat Omar to her. Their driver finally arrived, a nervous, middle-aged man named Sam who looked terrified to be in Kwon's service. Kwon barked orders. We are going to Hamilton. The fastest route. Do not stop for anything. As they sped towards Hamilton, Kwon started working the phone, trying to reach the trusted guard who was hiding Sonia. The call wouldn't go through. They've gone dark, Kwon said, his jaw rigid. Omar is probably already there. He is faster than the police, and he is driven by pure madness. In the back seat, Zara opened the metal box. She looked at the hard drive. I can't break the final encryption, Zara said, her voice shaking with adrenaline and fear. It's too complex. My software is too slow. I need a mainframe. Kwon looked at her, his face dark with realization. He had lost everything, but he still had his professional knowledge. I know a place, Kwon said, his eyes hard and strategic. A high-security data center near Hamilton. It was a dark site for the syndicate's offshore processing, a hidden fortress. It has the computing power you need. And it's the one place Minute-ho won't look, because he doesn't know it exists. Their objective was clear. They had to race against Omar, get to the dark site, break the final code on the hard drive, and use the information to expose the entire syndicate, and Minute-ho, before Omar could hurt Sonia. If you can get me 20 minutes on that mainframe, Zara said, looking Kwon straight in the eye, all fear gone, replaced by a desperate purpose, I can break the code. I can name them all. Kwon stared at the woman he had underestimated, seeing the fire of justice burning in her tired eyes. He had nothing left but this chance. His money was gone, his honor was gone, and his empire was collapsing. Then we will do it, Kwon declared, his voice cold and determined. We will destroy Minute-ho, we will destroy Omar, and we will destroy the syndicate. I will lose everything, but I will not lose my revenge. The car screamed down the highway toward Hamilton. They were fugitives, stripped bare of their former lives, racing towards the one place that held the key to justice and survival, a hidden digital fortress. The collapse of control had forced an incredible, dangerous purpose into the hearts of both the disgraced Mafia boss and the determined barista. They were finally running towards the solution, not away from the problem. The collapse is complete. Kwon is disgraced, Minute-ho is in power, Omar is hunting Sonia, and Zara is seconds away from breaking the code. They are now on the final, desperate dash toward the syndicate's hidden data center. The black sedan screeched to a halt outside the hidden data center near Hamilton, Canada. This wasn't a sleek corporate building. It was a large, windowless concrete bunker, disguised as a defunct manufacturing plant, a dark site the syndicate used for high-level, untraceable data processing. Kwon and Zara tumbled out of the car. Their driver, Sam, the loyalist, looked terrified, but he didn't run. Main entrance is too exposed, Kwon commanded, breathing hard. There's a utility access panel on the west side. Sam, you watch the perimeter. Do not let anyone near that door. Kwon looked at Zara, his face intense. We have minutes before Minute-ho's cleanup crew finds the trail. You get to that mainframe, and you don't stop until the file is decrypted. But as they ran toward the west side of the bunker, they realized they were too late. A rusty pickup truck was already parked beside the utility panel. And standing guard over the entrance, smoking a cigarette with a sick, satisfied smirk on his face, was Omar. Well, Omar drawled, crushing the cigarette under his boot. Look at the little sparrow, flying right into my net. And she brought the rich boy who wants to play hero. You wasted your money, Kwon. She's mine. Omar was flanked by two brutal, silent men, remnants of the New Jersey crew. They weren't interested in a clean fight. They wanted blood and chaos. The hard drive, Omar demanded, pointing a thick, scarred finger at Zara. Give it to me, and maybe I let the rich boy watch me take you back to New Jersey. Kwon pushed Zara behind him. He didn't draw his weapon yet. He needed to buy her time. You don't want the hard drive, Omar, Kwon said, his voice dangerously low. You want to run. My enemies are cleaning up this city. You are a loose end. Take my money and disappear. Omar laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Money? I got enough money to live 10 lives from the man who hired me to clean up your little girlfriend's daddy. I want what I was promised. And that's her. Omar's men advanced. Sam, the loyal driver, suddenly rushed forward, pulling a small, legal handgun from his glove compartment. He fired a single warning shot into the air. The sudden noise startled Omar, giving Kwon the distraction he needed. Go, Zara. Now. Kwon yelled. He lunged forward, tackling one of Omar's men, driving him hard into the concrete wall. Zara didn't hesitate. She scrambled to the utility panel, her fingers fumbling with the lock. Sam exchanged fire with the other of Omar's men, creating a deadly diversion. Kwon was fighting a brutal, desperate battle. He was a strategist and a financier, not a street fighter. But the humiliation, the betrayal, and the fierce, protective instinct he now felt for Zara gave him a terrifying strength. He fought with controlled, efficient violence, neutralizing his opponent's joints and pressure points. Zara finally yanked the panel open, revealing a dark stairwell. Kwon. It's open. Come on, she screamed over the chaos. Omar, seeing his prize about to slip away, abandoned the fight with Sam and lunged for Zara. She's mine. Kwon roared. He pulled his own, silenced weapon and fired one shot, not at Omar, but at the concrete ceiling just above Omar's head. The sudden cascade of dust and debris momentarily blinded the killer. Go, Zara. I'm right behind you. Kwon yelled. Zara didn't look back. She plunged down the stairs, the metal box clutched to her chest. Kwon, having bought her the vital seconds, followed immediately. The sound of Omar's furious, frustrated screams echoed behind them. Sam's last position was unknown. Zara burst into the data center. It was a massive, cold room filled with humming servers and blinking lights, the brain of the syndicate's offshore operations. She raced to the central mainframe, a giant, complex terminal encased in frosted glass. Kwon followed, securing the heavy door and locking it just as Omar began hammering on the metal. Terminal D4. Kwon shouted, pointing to a small, isolated console. That's the gateway. You have 5 minutes before he breaks that door. Zara's fingers flew across the keyboard. She plugged in her father's hard drive, navigated the complex network, and found the access port for the massive computing power. She initiated the final decryption sequence. The screen lit up with code, the massive processors working to break the military-grade encryption. The countdown began, 4:58. 4:57. Kwon stood with his back to the door, his weapon raised, listening to the desperate, metal-bending sounds of Omar trying to break through. Talk to me. Kwon demanded. What's the file? Who is it? Zara stared at the screen, her heart pounding in sync with the crashing sounds on the door. 3:00. 2:59. It's a master ledger. Zara yelled. It's logging every transaction for the last 10 years. The names are encoded as project directors. I see Minute Ho, and I see your rival, Mr. Beck. They were all involved. But there is one name that keeps appearing, the primary beneficiary of every single transaction. The code is almost broken. Kwon's face was grim. This was the moment of truth, the identity of the person who truly controlled the entire web of crime. 2:00. 1:59. The decryption bar was agonizingly slow. The metal door began to groan and bend inward under Omar's relentless assault. Faster! Kwon screamed. 1:30. 1:29. Suddenly, the screen flashed. The encryption lock dissolved. The final file, the master ledger, opened. Zara scanned the list of names, the corporate directors, the politicians, the financiers. And then she saw the name that appeared over and over, linked as the primary decision-maker, the ultimate project director, the true head of the entire operation. Zara froze, her breath catching in her throat. She looked up at Kwon, her eyes wide with a terrible, shocking recognition. Kwon, Zara whispered, the terror of Omar momentarily forgotten, replaced by a profound, agonizing understanding. The project director. The man who orchestrated the entire expansion that led to my father's death. The man who ran the syndicate from the inside while pretending to be disgraced. Kwon stared at her, bracing himself for the name of his worst rival, Minute Ho, or perhaps the powerful politician, Eunji's father. The name is not Minute Ho, Zara said, her voice heavy with pain. It's your brother. Sung Ho. Kwon's world tilted violently. The betrayal by June and Minute Ho was nothing compared to this. No, Kwon denied immediately, his voice flat with disbelief. Sung Ho was the honest one. I disgraced him. I framed him to save the family name. You were a pawn, Kwon. Zara cried, turning the screen so he could see the cold, undeniable truth. Sung Ho didn't expose the syndicate. He used the legitimate family business to build a parallel, even bigger criminal empire right under your father's nose. When your father died, Sung Ho was ready to take over both the legal and illegal empires. But you found the embezzlement, Zara continued, connecting the dots of the agonizing family history. You threatened to expose his illegal side, not the corporate side. He didn't want to be disgraced by the syndicate. So he forced your hand. He framed himself for the corporate fraud you exposed, making you the betrayer, and using your ambition to take his place in the syndicate. He knew you would take the fall while he disappeared to run the real show from deep cover. He sacrificed you. The betrayal was complete. Kwon hadn't chosen to betray his brother, he had been manipulated into it. His entire life of cold, brutal power was based on a lie orchestrated by the man he thought he was protecting. Sung Ho was the true monster, the mastermind who used everyone, including Omar, who was paid to kill Zara's father during the expansion, to consolidate his power and ensure his brother, Kwon, was the perfect scapegoat. The door behind Kwon burst inward with a sickening shriek of tearing metal. Omar stood there, panting, wild-eyed, and holding a heavy metal pipe. No more games, you rich pig. Omar screamed, lunging for Zara. Kwon didn't hesitate. The shock of his brother's betrayal galvanized his mind. He was finished with saving face, finished with power games. He raised his weapon and fired a precise, controlled shot at Omar's exposed knee, dropping the killer instantly. It's over, Omar, Kwon said, his voice cold and final. You took a contract from a dead man. He turned back to Zara. The countdown was now truly over. Send it all, Kwon commanded. The master ledger, the coded communications, everything. Use the mainframe's encrypted line. Send it to every major regulatory body in the world. Zara nodded, her fingers flying across the keyboard one last time. She attached the entire decrypted file, adding a detailed explanation of the corporate structure and the names of the syndicate elders. She hit the final key. Within seconds, the most powerful criminal organization in Asia, controlled by the supposedly disgraced Sung Ho and his syndicate partners, was exposed to the world. Kwon's entire life was over. But so was the syndicate. An hour later, Kwon and Zara were sitting in the data center, the silence now broken only by the hum of the cooling fans. The police and regulators would be here soon. Kwon had used the final moments to send an anonymous tip, ensuring the integrity of the data. You have your justice, Kwon said, his voice flat. He was staring at the floor, the weight of his brother's ultimate betrayal a crushing burden. My life is finished. I exposed myself, and I exposed the family name. I have nothing left. Zara looked at him. She saw the proud, cold man who had hurt her, but she also saw the man who had risked everything, including his shame, to save her life and help her achieve justice. You saved more than your name, Zara said softly, reaching out and gently touching his hand. You saved my mother, you saved me, and you ended the life of a man who killed his own brother's soul. You didn't just expose the syndicate, you gave me back my life. Kwon looked at her. Two people from completely different worlds, now inextricably linked by a single hard drive and two deep betrayals. Her father, Lincoln, was killed by Sung Ho's plot. Kwon was ruined by Sung Ho's plot. Their families were connected at the very heart of the crime. Their destinies had collided for a singular, explosive moment of truth. The police sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder. Kwon looked at Zara, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, a smile of acceptance, and perhaps, relief. "I suppose," Kwon murmured, accepting his fate. "I finally learned to wait my turn. And it cost me everything." He stood up, taking off his expensive, ruined coat. He looked at Zara, the last person to see the truth of him. "You will go to your mother, Zara Dixon," Kwon said, his voice strong with finality. "You will go to nursing school. You will tell the authorities everything, everything except my involvement. I protected you, you protected me. That is the end of our bargain." He looked out the frosted glass, watching the red and blue lights approaching. He had lost his fortune and his power, but he had found something unexpected: purpose, and the cold, strange satisfaction of true justice. He was finally free of the lie he lived. As the police stormed the bunker, Zara watched Kwon raise his hands in surrender, ready to face the legal consequence of his life. She had escaped the monster from her past, thanks to the monster of her present. The debt was paid, the ledger was closed, and their strange, explosive destiny had finally been fulfilled. The end.